And today we're talking about Van Helsing, Season 5, Episode 3, Lumina Intunecata. Ooh! Okay guys, welcome back to the Town Show. Before we get started, there's going to be a whole bunch of spoilers for Season 5, Episode 3, and basically anything before this, so if you haven't seen up to here, I would stop. Okay guys, moving forward, Van Helsing fact. A lot of you guys have been asking me, is Messy Pendergram coming back to Van Helsing? Well, she's actually still starring in the FBI show called FBI, very original name, right now on CBS. They just finished Season 3, and they got renewed for Season 4, so I doubt she'll be coming back to the show. You know guys that I really enjoyed her character. I think that Scarlett Van Helsing, aka Scarlett Harker, was a definite badass. Anyway guys, moving along, let's talk about what happened in this episode, what it all means, right? There's some definitely temporal consequences for Jack and the Oracle. We're going to get into those consequences a little later on. First, let's tackle the meat and potatoes of the episode, right? So Jack, you had one job and you failed. You failed horribly. The Dark One rose. That was the only thing you were there for. You were there to make sure the Dark One did not rise. But we did get a lot of interesting backstory, and I'm going to break it all down for you guys right here, so get comfortable. So Jack, she let Michaela, who's the mother, and we found out in this episode that Michaela is actually the founder of the Sisterhood, and that they were basically a plight, a terror of vampires that just basically accosted and bothered humankind for a very long time. But something more interesting is that we didn't know in this particular mythology of Van Helsing, how did Dracula or the Dark One really arise, or where did it come from? Well, we found out in this episode that the Dark One is actually some type of spirit or like an essence that's been around for a very long time, since the beginning of humankind, and has been bothering and accosting humankind for a very long time. We also found out that in Bathory's scrolls, which were passed down to her, remember, she comes from a lineage of vampire hunters, that the scroll said that the Dark One was first basically called upon, or better yet, summoned via the scrolls, and that the scrolls also have the power, as we saw in the episode. Bathory wasn't able to complete the ritual, the reading, but the scrolls also have the power to banish and vanquish the Dark One. So the Dark One, or the Dracula of this universe, it wasn't that, normally in the vampire lore, we have that Dracula is the first vampire, and basically he creates other vampires. Well, in this case, we found out the Dark One was around for a very long time. It's kind of like an essence, maybe a demon or a spirit, and that they had no body, and that it was actually summoned through the scrolls, and in this particular instance, it took over the body of Dracula. Now, Dark One could also be banished via the scrolls, as we found out from Bathory. She wasn't able to accomplish this. You failed, Bathory, right? You had one job also, like Jack, so both of them failed. But we also found out why the relationship is with Michaela and Bathory, why there's always been conflict between them. We found out in prior seasons that Bathory was actually the one who put Michaela in that tomb, that basically she contained her and imprisoned her in the past. So even though they're both vampires, we know that their future is not very chummy. Things are going to come to develop in the future. This episode also introduces us to a temporal paradox, also known as a time paradox, right? Because how did Bathory and Jack not know each other in the future if in this instance they actually knew each other in the past, right? So that creates a conflict, something that really doesn't make sense to me. So let me explain further. So Bathory and Jack now know each other in the past. That means that future Bathory and Jack should have recognized themselves when they saw each other in the future, but they didn't. That means that this is a paradox, or it's an alternate reality, an alternate dimension. They created a split basically in the Van Helsing universe. In this reality, Jack and Bathory know each other, and in the future selves of Jack and Bathory, they'll know each other. Because in the current timeline, Bathory and Jack did not know each other in the future. So that creates a paradox, right? How is it possible that Bathory and Jack never knew each other if they've actually fought the Dark One in the past? Quite confusing. Something else that we learned from this episode is that Count Dalibor, even though he passed away in this episode, he's out of the season, right? He's out of the series. His son Christoph Van Dracula was renamed Jack Van Helsing. So that means that Vanessa is probably a descendant of Christoph Van Dracula, which is interesting because Vanessa supposedly has the blood of the Dark One in her, right? She's part vampire to an extent. The thing is that when Christoph was created by using the blood of those villagers, he somehow must have some darkness within him. So I think that Christoph Van Helsing, we're going to hear that name again in the future, and it's definitely going to relate somehow to Vanessa and relate to the Dark One as well. So there were a lot of answers in this episode, and I got to give it to Jonathan Lloyd Walker. He was right when he said on Twitter the answers are coming. We got a lot of answers. He also wrote this episode, by the way, and it was also directed by Jonathan Scarfe. Basically started the whole Transylvania saga, and the duo directed and wrote and finished the Transylvania saga. So I'm assuming that we're done with Transylvania and that we're moving back to a new world because Jack is going back to America, and somehow she's going to time travel to the future and she's going to meet up with her sister and hopefully Vanessa, and there'll be some ass kicking. So what did you guys think of this episode? Put it in the comments. Were you confused? Did you wonder, like, what the hell does this mean? What does Lumina Intunecata mean? I probably mispronounced the hell out of that. I looked it up. I think it means light in the clouds or something like that. The definition wasn't very clear. I looked up both words separately. So use your Twitter fingers and let us know, what do you think Lumina Intunecata means? Put it in the comments. As always, guys, this is the Tone Show. Tone Show. Ah, woo.